Russ, I know you are a critic of the Biden-McCarthy deal. What is the key feature missing?
Spending cuts. The House passed $5 trillion in spending cuts to deal with the debt that we were facing and to put us on a road to fiscal responsibility. This doesn't have that. This is at best a freeze, and the more we learn about it, the more we realize that it actually increases spending. But it's effectively a freeze of a $1.6 trillion discretionary budget, and it does nothing to be able to deal with where we are as a country. And that's really the issue. And to get past the election, $4 trillion isn't just 1 year. It's a 2-year deal to get through the election, so that Joe Biden is going to be running on this, and there are no leverage points against his administration and all of the things that they are doing as a woke and weaponized government against the American people. So it is massively problematic, and I'm honestly quite floored it was such a rout in terms of the negotiations based on where they were. They had the strongest of hands coming out of the House.
So McCarthy would say he got work requirements, he got administrative pay go, that technically next year, if you look at the numbers in just the right light, that it would be less spending than subsequently. And McCarthy would likely also argue that when President Trump was in office, when we had unified Republican control of the government, we never created any downward pressure on spending. So why can't McCarthy at least acknowledge that with 1/2 of 1/3 of the government, he did the best he could?
Well, let's look back. I mean, we had Democrats that were in control of the House of Representatives and the Republican Senate that had no desire to ever consider the cuts that we were putting forward. So in terms of the look back, that's where we are. This country put the House of Representatives in the Republicans' hands to do exactly what they did not a month ago. But here's the issue, is that they are never actually doing what they claim in this bill. And just take this administrative pay go. There's much ado about how this bill will allow for the regulations to be paid for with cuts within the administrative state. But everything is able to be waived by the OMB director. So it is a reform that if I was at OMB director still, that if I was working with a Republican agency, yeah, it would be useful. But when it's controlled by Democrats who want to spend money and then you give them a waiver, they're going to use the waiver. So every reform is like that when you study the fine print. They have an automatic continuing resolution. It's not actually an automatic continuing resolution. It will actually create pressure to have more omnibus bills that we saw just last year. So as I've studied it, Matt, every claim that the leadership has made breaks down on further analysis, and as much ambiguity as they're trying to put into this, the American people know that this is $4 trillion that gets President Biden through a critical time frame, and that's why he's out there gloating, taking questions from reporters, because he knows he won this thing fair and square.
I do not like the suspension of the debt limit, the $4 trillion in additional debt to accrue that gaslight is deeply troubling to me. But there's two ways to go from here for House Republicans. One is to burn the place down, to view this as the most central violation of trust between the leadership and the membership. The other theory of the case is they're probably going to get a majority of House Republicans to support this. And so what we have to focus on is reschooling and setting up for the appropriations fight in September that is to come. Do you believe that House Republicans will be able to get focused again during that appropriations process to check this woke and weaponized government?
I would make 2 points in that respect. Number one, this is a clear violation of the power sharing agreement that you all, the mighty 20, secured in the Speaker's battle. You ensured that that leadership would be in coalition with you, House conservatives, not with Hakeem Jeffries. They are violating that by going in this direction. And the last thing I would just say is this prejudges the appropriations process. So if you care about it, the appropriations fight's in the aftermath of a caps deal. There's only 2 years of caps. That is now a floor and a ceiling, and there is now no leverage whatsoever to make sure that you get riders or spending cuts or that you can go lower than this. It is going to be a difficult time of futility. Will I be there to help you all and make it useful? Yes. But the idea that just let this thing pass and then we'll get on with the appropriations process is just going to be a very disappointing thing for the American people.
What's challenging is that often in Washington, we confuse the debt limit with the debt floor. And if we gaslight the ability to accrue debt, we undeniably will. That is how potentially what we're watching unfold with the Biden-McCarthy deal could inform on the appropriations process and further hinder leverage in that process rather than enhancing leverage. McCarthy would point to the work requirements as a major win. Also, the fact that in the permitting process, rather than waiting 5 years, 7 years for environmental assessments to come through, there's now a 2-year limit on those things. Do you believe that that will drive sufficient growth to help us with receipts so that over this 2-year period, maybe not all of $4 trillion in debt is truly accrued?
Not particularly. Just look at the work requirement. Even one of the better work requirements only gets you about $100 billion, $150 billion, and they took the Medicaid out. And so it's now just a SNAP work requirement. Or the permitting reform. Yes, it's permitting reform. We need permitting reform. But this allows permitting reform for renewable projects that are killing our energy grid. And they took out all of the repeal of the subsidies of the Green New Deal. And so you look at this and you have to assess, does this actually advance our interest? And I think the answer clearly is no. They have been able to muster some things that sound conservative, but I think over and all, this will not pass the test historically and in the moment about what's necessary to get our fiscal house in order.
Russ Vought, President Trump's former budget chief. You know, we may have to get you back in that Oval Office one way or another to help us get better deals than this.